It's it's difficult to follow Dr. Hamm because that was so deep, so true, and in a lot of ways so troubling. Um, but I'll attempt to contribute in some way. You know, when traumatized, it changes us. It takes our sleep from us. It robs our sense of well-being. It it can destroy our hope. It makes us fearful. It may make us rageful. And we really we know all of these things from studying post-traumatic stress disorder. But I don't really want to talk about those things. But look at it another way. When traumatized, it really changes us. It changes our chemistry. You know, we are chemicals. We're hormones. We're enzymes. We're electrical reactions as well as organic chemistry reactions. Um, Trauma changes that. We don't think about it, but when we're traumatized, we're flooded with a change in our chemistries. The physiological responses are different. The levels of cortisol, of norepinephrine, of epinephrine, they all change. Our brain is perfused with these changes. And what happens? As a result of these changes, we're never the same. It actually can change our DNA. Well, it's not so much the actual DNA molecule, but the surface of the DNA is changed by the types of hormones they're bathed in, and it actually affects how that DNA manifests itself. The part of the DNA chain that's associated with control of mood may become totally unable to modulate itself. Whereas without those changes, a disappointment might be manifested with a disappointment. With those changes, the disappointment may not be a disappointment. It automatically moves into that catastrophic reaction response. Once these changes occur, they last. We pass them down to our offspring, and they will manifest the same types of characteristics, all behind the trauma that we experienced, or our grandfather experienced, or our great grandfather experienced. I think maybe the good news about that is it can change, you know, by being bathed in a sense of security over time, a sense of wellness, a sense of validation over time. That chemistry can treat itself, so to speak. But and there's a big new field that's looking at this. It's called, rather than genetics, it's epigenetics. Um, but I think what's important about the experience of African Americans in this country is that the trauma that occurred 400 years ago is still happening today. So it doesn't really give the natural treatment, natural resolution of some of these problems. So, you know, we end up with kids who are so-called uncontrollable in the classroom, who can't learn, and it's all related back to that initial trauma. You know, along with these changes, I think embedded in our DNA is knowledge of that past. I don't know if you've ever heard the saying, or if you've ever said, it's like, I know what I know. I don't know how I know it, but I know what I know. I don't know why I know it. I don't know how I know it, but I know it. There is something of a collective history, and I think it's like a collective soul that cries out at the injustice, that recognizes the injustice, and that, you know, that can destroy our spirit if we let it. That's why it's so important for us to start talking about this, why it's so important for us to validate each other, for us to respect each other, for us to recognize all of the aggression that's still being perpetuated against us, and that we also perpetuate against each other. You know, there's something in psychiatry called identification with the aggressor, where we take on some of their characteristics and treat each other the way we have been treated. So, you know, it's important for us to recognize all of that and to begin that healing process. You know, as Dr. Hamm talked about the history of our enslavement and the travel across the Atlantic. I know that history. I know it. I feel it. No one had to tell me, but, you know, the first time you hear it or you see it, you know it in your soul. That's our collective history. I've been in psychiatry for more than 25 years, and have had the opportunity to work with many people of all races during that time. But right now, in looking at this particular field, a couple of the patients come to mind that I saw early in my treatment, and I wish I had this knowledge at that point. And we all, I know we all know people and have all had instances like this where we can see the effects in someone else of this intergenerational trauma. But the first person it reminds me of was Melvin. And he was actually one of my first patients on inpatient psychiatric unit. He was 11-year-old African-American boy, small for his age, and he was admitted because of severe rage episodes and tearing up the classroom and aggression in the home, and destroying the home. And he was the sweetest little boy. He was excited actually about being in the hospital. He was excited about the attention he received. He had his own bed, and he had never had his own bed. He made his own toys. He showed me how he had made a basketball hoop in his room on the back of the door, and how he would shoot basketballs in that door. Then I'll never forget when he said, "Dr. Hamm, let me show you something." And he took the sheets off of his bed, and he showed me the mattress, and it said, "Made in Angola." Angola is the state prison in Louisiana, where it's famous for the level of cruelty. And one of the things that's said about Angola is, you may walk in, but you're never gonna leave. And he was sleeping on a mattress made in Angola, and and he said, "Does this mean I'm going to Angola?" I will never forget that. 1 year later, he was murdered. I actually saw it on television, where they showed his lifeless body lying on the ground, with his shoes, one of them on, one of them off, out, and I just remember that sweet kid who actually asked, "Dr. Hamm, can I come spend Christmas with you?" Because he was hospitalized during the Christmas episodes. And I was like, "Oh no," I actually I didn't really even seriously entertain it. And it's only later that I think back on that child that we lost. Another client that I haven't thought about her in years, but she was a young lady, 19 years old, who had experienced extensive abuse, severe physical abuse at the hands of her mother, and also sexual abuse in the home. She ran away from home when she was 12. She worked in various jobs, and including restaurants. And then at some point in those early adolescent years, 12, 13, she came under the care of an older gentleman. She did have a history. She did become involved in prostitution, but at the time that I was treating her, it was a fairly brief period. I was treating her for post-traumatic stress and for depression, and she was at that point a strong advocate for the needs of children. And I remember saying to her, and it's one of the things that I think about. I feel so stupid in having said. It's like, "Mary, you're so strong. Many people who have gone through what you went through would not have survived." And I can see the look I guess that the unveiling, when she turned and looked at me deeply into my eyes, and she said, "Dr. Hamm, I didn't survive. I have AIDS." And she was terminal, and died a few months after that. At the time, I worked with women's and children's team that provided treatment to women and children infected with HIV. And around that time, I began to really lose a lot of patients, and left the clinic shortly after that. So it's psychiatry. You know, I tell people it's serious work. When I went into psychiatry, I did not realize it was life and death work. You know, I practiced family medicine for 7 years before moving into psychiatry, and that was life and death. You know, you may have to treat a medical emergency where the outcome was life and death. But I slowly came to realize that this work, and with teaching, and you know, any public service, it's life and death, because it's serious. The effects of trauma is serious. The destructiveness that it brings into our emotional lives, you know, into our health. It's life and death. And so I really look forward to looking at the many ways we can start healing this trauma that is now embedded in our soul, embedded in our DNA, and not just for our clients, but for our own souls. We need to do this, and I'll be happy to entertain questions, but I think that's about all I have at this time.